Imagine trying to locate a single, easily available solution for most of your adult life. Who is your father? Not for fame, fortune, or power, but just for the truth. Ramir Carter has been doing that for over a decade. And one of the richest and most significant figures in hip-hop, Jay-Z, is the man at the center of this pursuit. This is real life, even though it sounds like a Netflix drama. Wanda, a single mother, reared Ramir while he was a child. He was raised by a man who was not his real father, she told him early on. She claimed that his biological father was Sean Carter. That is Jay-Z prior to his rise to fame. According to Wanda, she was a teenager in the early 1990s when she first met Jay-Z in Philadelphia. He was already in his 20s and becoming well known in the music business. She says it all began when he took her to his aunt's apartment in Brooklyn. Since then, years have gone by, and Ramir has remained committed to finding the truth. His mother died while fighting for him. Court documents, a statement she signed, and the man's original birth certificate's DNA exclusions. The evidence keeps pointing to Jay-Z. However, every time Ramir tries to involve the courts, the subject seems to encounter a barrier. Anything from delays to jurisdictional excuses to legal gibberish has transpired. Things get considerably messier at this point. Ramir has been referred to as a liar and a clout chaser, despite having spent his own money to pursue justice and having Jay-Z refuse to provide him a DNA test. But when you hear him speak, he doesn't sound like someone who wants to become wealthy. Someone seems to be exhausted. I'm tired of being criticized, ignored, and kept silent. Now it's 50 Cent. Needless to say, 50 Cent will not pass up this chance. After previously criticizing the hypocrisy in the field, he has reportedly taken Ramir's side. Furthermore, there are reports that 50 might feature Ramir in a follow-up documentary that would fully reveal the circumstances. This is no longer just an issue within the family. A full-scale media storm is taking shape. Jay-Z was recently ordered by a judge to respond to the complaint by July 18th. That decision alone is momentous. The legal system has been holding up this case for over a decade, but it is now finally moving forward. That shift has important ramifications for power, fame, and accountability, in addition to being important for Ramir. The most bizarre part is that there are claims that Jay-Z's company even tried to settle the dispute amicably. Before things changed, they reportedly promised to support R's music career and get him a record deal. When new lawyers took control, everything suddenly came to a halt. There was no help, no answer, and no dialogue. Additionally, the games being played are not limited to lawful ones. This person has been hauled throughout the community. Online mockery, accusations of delusions, and accusations that he only wants money are all directed at him. But if you listen carefully, you will hear a different tone in his voice. He has no grudges. He's not shouting. The only thing he wants is the truth. It becomes intriguing at this point, because there is a history behind every well-known celebrity lie. Sworn affidavits, property records, DNA exclusions, and signatures are also included. Jay-Z has also not taken the test yet. Never. Not to switch it off even. What's the point? Why don't you just show that this child isn't really yours? No, everyone is asking the same question. Before anyone had heard of Rockefeller, Jay-Z was just another ambitious rapper navigating Brooklyn and Philadelphia in the early 1990s. According to Wanda, that's when their paths crossed. She was a vulnerable child who was still developing her identity. Jay-Z, who was already in his 20s, picked her up from Philadelphia and drove her across state lines to New York. That detail alone is enough to arouse a lot of anger. The consent age in Pennsylvania was and is 17 years old. It is correct to say that she became pregnant at the age of 15 and gave birth at the age of 16. Additionally, indeed, it raises significant problems that go beyond paternity. Even after Ari was born, Wanda continued to try to contact Jay-Z, but there was stillness. She claimed her ex-boyfriend, Robert Graves, was the father years later, but a DNA test showed he wasn't. That was when everything changed for Rhyme. In 2010, he filed his first paternity case in court. But he quickly learned that defeating a billionaire would not be easy. Jay-Z's legal team argued that he couldn't be forced to take a paternity test in New Jersey because he didn't live there. Rhyme's team countered that it had evidence that Jay-Z owned property in the state. Nothing changed, though. The judges were switched. Documents mysteriously disappeared. Courts said that there were technical errors. The system itself appeared to be against the lawsuit's progress. Rimmer's irritation kept growing. It was no longer just fighting for comprehension. He was fighting what he saw as blatant fraud and collusion inside the legal system. Lily Coley, his godmother, proved to be one of his staunchest supporters. She not only publicly claimed that Wanda was underage, but she also claimed that Jay-Z's employees knew about the situation and tried to hide it. There were rumors of songs and probable deals, opportunities, access to labels, and even cash. But the tone changed when Rhyme spoke up. Suddenly, the company appeared to pull together to protect one of its biggest stars. The emotional toll should also be considered. Rhy has more than just a legal problem to deal with. His life is marked by confusion, desertion, and public humiliation. He says he doesn't want money. He's not looking for revenge. All he wants to know is where he came from. There's no longer his mother. All she left him with was the name Sean Carter and the belief that he ought to know the truth. Jay-Z's silence has simply made the situation worse. A man who has built his business on Black success, family, and legacy finds it hard to understand the reluctance to take part. Why have you spent over a decade living with this story? To put a decisive stop to it, why not take a test? Of course, that is, unless the exam reveals everything. Their public opinion is starting to shift. More and more people are wondering why someone with nothing to hide would spend 10 years avoiding a single, simple test, especially since Diddy is already well known and rumors are starting to link hitherto unaddressed subjects. As a storm rages over the hip-hop business, some of the biggest performers are being criticized. 50 Cent, in spite of all, is not escalating the conflict here. He's never been one to bite his tongue. At the moment, it is thought that he is integrating Rhyme into his documentary endeavors. No matter how small, how personal, or whether it's just 50 being 50, he isn't going to let this story go. The tone has shifted simply because he is providing Rhyme with a platform. A deadline has been set. Jay-Z has until July 18th to respond to the court. The clock is ticking. Rhymer Carter never intended to topple a legendary figure in music. It is about reclaiming identity, which is something that most people take for granted. When he was younger, he never asked to be linked to one of the most significant figures in hip-hop. He had no interest in cameras or the media. All he wanted was a reaction. Despite this, he is 32 years old and has spent more than half of his life attempting to get a man to simply acknowledge him. There is real anguish in his voice. He's not shouting into a microphone or trying to cause a fight. It's for someone whose name has been damaged for almost a decade. He is quiet, grounded, and strangely composed. He mentions his mother with deference. She sat him down that day, called him by his given name, and said, "This is your father." She moved on without saying it once. She kept saying that over the years until he had seen it in his mind. That consistency remained with him. That was why he was sure she was telling the truth. Now she's gone. She died before ever getting the resolution she fought for. When she died, those who didn't want this story to air continued to call her a liar. But Rhymer refuses to let denial rob her of her memory. In his opinion, this clash satisfies her last wish, revealing the truth, no matter how long it takes. The details of the case are terrifying. According to reports, Wanda became pregnant at the age of 15. She was reportedly taken over state lines by a male in his 20s. That raises a number of moral and legal questions, including paternity. But instead of offering solutions, the system skirted these problems. Judges came and went, paperwork was lost or misfiled, and courts claimed they had no authority. With strong legal representation, Jay-Z's team fought every chance they could. And with hip-hop royalty coming under further scrutiny, everything feels more unstable now. It's under investigation, and everyone is starting to re-examine all of the rumors, cover-ups, and whispers that the business used to stifle the image of. Jay-Z, who was once seen as a strategic genius and cultural leader, has changed. A man who could be willing to. You would have to spend millions to get out of a cotton swab. The silence hurts more than anything else. Ree doesn't get why a man who talks about legacy and generational wealth would be so hesitant to talk to his alleged firstborn. He said over and over again that he doesn't want money. All he looks for is the truth. He's not asking for a seat at the Roc Nation table or a share of the enterprise. He just wants to know where he came from and why someone would go to such lengths to destroy him. Some stories claim that Ryer is being sued for slander by Jay-Z, who is also trying to place Ryer under a gag order. If such conduct is sincere, it appears to be an attempt to permanently remove the story from the public eye. But it's too late to keep quiet. Even the internet doesn't forget. Public pressure is mounting, and this time, attorneys are not dictating the narrative from behind the scenes. Ree just asks Jay-Z to take a DNA test. It turns out that he is not the father. The story is over. However, everything changes if it turns out that he is. Not just for Ramir, but also for Jay-Z, his family, and his painstakingly created legacy. In any case, that test is important. And as July 18th approaches, everyone is anticipating if Sean Carter will finally come clean.